It's become more special as we speak. And I'm glad to use that term, special military operation, because it distinguishes the reality that Russia hasn't been at war with Ukraine, that Ukraine has been given a great deal of latitude that would not be afforded nations at war. Latitude that allows for normalcy of life, the ability to engage in commerce without disruption, in things of this nature, almost a singular focus on the war at the front and that aspect of Ukrainian societal interaction that directly relates to the war. For instance, if you have an air base with airplanes, if you have a factory producing drones, these will be struck. But because Zelensky made a decision on 25 June to engage in a 40-day war, a drone war, long range and intermediate range strikes against the strategic depth of Russia, and that he has expanded the target deck to go beyond those targets which could be legitimately claimed to be military related. For instance, hitting oil refineries. It's a legitimate target of war. Hitting Russian defense industry factories, a legitimate target of war. People will say, well, why is Russia letting them get away with this? Well, in a way, Russia's hitting the same targets in Ukraine. But then on July 18th, after Mikhail Fedorov, the defense minister who started this drone operation, was fired because it was failing, the new defense minister opted to expand the drone war to include the Wildberries network. Wildberries is an online retailer similar to Amazon, Walmart, things of that nature. You're purely civilian. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the Ukrainians started striking Wildberry distribution centers, warehouses. It's the same thing of hitting a Walmart distribution center, et cetera. They burn easy. They're full of cardboard boxes, and it makes for spectacular imagery. It was a fatal mistake, because now what Russia has done is taken the gloves off. What they've said is that Ukraine will no longer exist as a modern nation state. Ukraine has been bragging for some time that they've controlled the Black Sea. They've kicked Russia out of the Black Sea. That's because Russia let them. Russia wasn't going to escalate this conflict unnecessarily. Russia also had an obligation, through arrangements made with the West, to allow Ukraine to ship grain out of their ports and allow commerce to go in. Russia just shut the Black Sea to Ukraine. Ukraine no longer has access to the Black Sea. Ukrainian ports are being shut down. Ships are being sunk. Port facilities are being destroyed. This should have been done a long time ago if Russia was at war. If Russia had done this in 2022, 2023, the war would be over at that time. But Russia is shutting down the Ukrainian economy. Ukraine made a decision they were going to strike Russian gasoline stations. Russia shut down all of the gas stations along the front line, and now they're driving it backwards. There will be no gas stations left in Ukraine by the time Russia's finished. There will be no distribution centers. Ukraine will run out of supplies. At the same time, Russia is destroying Ukraine's industrial infrastructure, massive strikes on the totality of the industry, even if it's dual use or in some cases singular use. Russia understands that Ukraine has taken their drone manufacturing capacity and distributed it into the private homes of Ukrainian citizens, into the basements of apartment buildings, and into the storage facilities of shopping centers. Those shopping centers no longer will exist. The winter is coming. We're still in the midst of summer, but winter is coming. And when winter arrives in Ukraine, there will be no heat, no energy, no power, ability to produce power. There will be no food, no supplies, no nothing. Ukraine is dead as a nation state. That's what's happening, Judge. The Ukrainians made a decision, a fatal decision, to expand this war to hurt the Russian people. This is a stated goal and objective of Volodymyr Zelensky when he announced the 40-day drone war, to bring the pain to the Russian people, to make the Russian people understand what war is. All you did is kill yourself, pal.
The Western media seems to have dialed back its cheerleading for Ukraine and its claims that Ukraine was winning. I mean, you have written and spoken extensively about this, particularly mentioning some people who are prominent in doing it, but I haven't heard those voices, nor have I heard the level from the Western media in the past couple of weeks. Has the media learned what you just articulated? The situation on the ground is changing and is about to change radically.
I don't know if the media has. They're still echoing nonsense, claiming that. I mean, right now, a prominent theme is that Russia is winning, but it's a Pyrrhic victory. I mean, study history. King Pyrrhus, I think 279 BC, fought a battle at Acculum against the Romans and won, but he lost 20% of his army and was unable to continue the campaign. So he won the battle, lost the war, a Pyrrhic victory, basically implying in a war of attrition that you're suffering more losses than your enemy and your losses can't be replaced. What is it about the Russian conflict that lends itself to that? Nothing. It is a war of attrition. It's Ukraine that's running out of men, Ukraine that's running out of equipment, the West that can no longer supply Ukraine, Russia that has more than sufficient manpower, Russia that has a defense industry firing on all cylinders. Anybody using the Pyrrhic victory analog is intellectually dishonest and trying to deceive, and that's the problem. The entire Western embracing of the pro-Ukrainian, Ukraine is going to win narrative has been built on a bodyguard of lies, a fabrication. Zelensky thought he was flying to Washington, D.C. today to be greeted as a conquering hero. Nobody greeted him at the airport. He got off the airplane and he had his corruption scandal-ridden ambassador greeting him, and the pilot had to come down to have a two-person greeting team. He's going to go to the White House, and I think it's going to be a worse result than what happened the last time he went to the White House because he's a loser. This is the reflection. The other thing is, I think even the West understands that Zelensky went a bridge too far in striking wildeberries. I mean, there are, of course, pro-Ukrainian outlets that will say, aha, look at the pain we brought. But I think most people realize that what goes around comes around. There is cause and effect. Newton's third law of physics applies to geopolitics. And when you bomb civilian targets, expect civilian targets to be bombed in return. And you and I have had this conversation in the past. Whatever Ukraine sends into Russia goes pop. It doesn't hurt. It creates flames, it creates photo opportunities, but it doesn't bring real pain. It's like a mosquito bite. Russia responds with things that go boom. So Ukraine is biting Russia with a mosquito. Russia's amputating Ukrainian arms in response. This war isn't going to last for long, and I think the media is recognizing this. And I think they also recognize that none of the solutions that the West has proffered to help Ukraine, air defense, they say they need. There is no air defense in Ukraine today. Russia has free reign. So Trump offers a license that isn't going to produce a single patriot under ideal circumstances for 2 to 4 years. How does that help the situation today? It doesn't. Nothing the West is offering Ukraine is going to resolve any of the problems that Ukraine faces today. Ukraine will freeze to death and starve to death this winter if they last that long.
Has the Russian military recently called up 500,000 more men?
No, the Russian military hasn't called up 500,000 more men. Vladimir Putin signed a decree increasing the size of the Russian military to include an additional 25,000 active duty troops. And people are going, oh, there must be desperation. No, it's just back in 2006, Russia did away with what they call construction battalions, or they reduced the number of construction battalions. And the decision is because of the absolute need for the ability to reconstruct the new Russian territories when this war ends, because Russia knows this war will end and they will win. And when they do win, they need to go in and rebuild the towns, the cities, and they need construction battalions, military construction battalions. So Vladimir Putin signed into law the ability to increase the size of the Russian army to include 25,000 additional active duty troops that are exclusively construction battalion. The 300 to 500,000 mark is a Western propaganda ploy, indicating the desperation on the part of Russia. People should instead reflect on what Vladimir Putin did yesterday when he spoke to the State Duma. While he was issuing out awards, somebody apparently turned to him and said, "Mr. President, we support you, but go harder, go stronger, be bolder." And he mentioned that in front of the Duma. He said, he wants me to go bolder. Should I go bolder? The Duma shouted yes. Anybody who thinks, including some people that appear on your show, that Vladimir Putin is going to suffer a reversal on September 20th at the Duma elections doesn't understand the dynamic of Russia at all. Vladimir Putin just got permission from the Duma to do anything he wants to do to increase the pressure on Ukraine. Now, he also spoke of, Odessa as a Russian city. He spoke about the partitioning of Ukraine, all things that nobody in Ukraine wants to hear, but this is the new reality of Ukraine. This is their future, a partitioned nation where they lose access to the Black Sea. Odessa is a Russian city, but to take Odessa will require increasing the number of troops. Now, he hasn't announced it, but he is creating the conditions that would allow him to mobilize people. The 300 to 500,000 number is common sense. If you draw a line showing what Russia would have to take if they took Odessa, you're increasing frontage and you're increasing territory. If Russia has 700,000 troops committed to the SMO area now, and you expand it into Odessa, military math suggests that you'll need an additional 300 to 500,000 troops to occupy that territory. So this is the direction I believe Russia is going, but Vladimir Putin hasn't made that decision yet. He is involved in creating the political framework that would make that decision viable if and when the time comes.
What is the military significance of the entry, or I should say re-entry, of General Surovikin into the senior command?
Well, it's interesting. There was a time in the U.S. military where military leaders could be removed and then brought back in. Terry Allen is very famous from World War II. The commander of the Big Red One on Sicily got relieved of command. Said he was exhausted. If that was today, he'd be fired, drummed out, never seen again. Instead, they brought him back, and he was a very successful division commander throughout the war. Surovikin was the commander of the SMO. He was relieved or removed in the aftermath of the Prigozhin mutiny because many people deemed him to be too sympathetic or wasn't harsh enough on Prigozhin and Wagner. He went off to do things in Africa to work with, to get Wagner transitioned into what's called the Africa Corps, which, by the way, is kicking some serious ass today in the Sahel. The French-backed, jihadists that attacked Mali are being routed as we speak by Africa Corps, and they're doing well in Niger and Burkina Faso as well. And so now, he's coming back. This is a man who his strategic vision was absolute. He's somebody who, stabilized the front after the Ukrainians carried out their betrayal of the Istanbul process by attacking Russia at a time when Russia was withdrawing its troops from a territory to get the perception of a Ukrainian victory. He built the Surovikin line to hold against that. He's also the man that initiated the strategic suppression of enemy air defense campaign that has destroyed Ukraine's ability to defend itself. It's Surovikin who initiated this campaign of destroying Patriot missiles and taking down the integrated air defense of Ukraine, and it has been successful. This is a man possessing strategic vision, and if you're going to expand this war, you need somebody that has that capacity, has the respect of the Russian soldiers. So I think, I don't know exactly what Surovikin is going to be doing, if he's going to be doing anything at all, but the reintroduction of him shows, one, the maturity of the Russian military to bring capable generals back in, if needed. And two, it implies that Russia is getting ready to do something big. Surovikin's a big operation kind of guy.
Has Crimea effectively been cut off from the Russian mainland?
No, absolutely not. This is just an absurd, bold-faced lie told by people. Look, I'm trying to be nice here, but Gilbert Doctorow is just a propagandist of the worst order. He's somebody who has come out and misrepresented a presentation made by the Russian government in Vienna about the war crimes committed by Ukraine. He lied about statements made by the governor of Kherson, by statements made by the ambassador at large for war crimes, by the ombudsman for children's rights. I know all these people. I personally know them. I'm friends with them. I talk to them frequently. And to have somebody come on your program and elsewhere and openly lie about this is disturbing in the extreme. But it's done because Gilbert Doctorow and others are tasked with creating the perception that Russia is losing this war, that Kherson and Crimea is uninhabitable. The Ukrainian drone operations are causing problems for Ukraine. For Crimea. There's no doubt about that. A state of emergency, however, does not mean that that Crimea is uninhabitable. There are millions of people living there who haven't fled, who wake up every morning and put food on the table, go to work. There's gasoline, believe it or not. It just means that changes have to be made under wartime conditions. But while this state of emergency is taking place, what Gilbert Doctorow and other people don't acknowledge is that Russia is killing every single person responsible for bringing pain to Crimea. The Ukrainians are losing 80 to 100 and even more now of their most experienced drone operators every day. Every time a drone flies and strikes Ukraine, the Russian ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, pinpoints it, hammers it, and kills them. Then the Ukrainians bring in new people, they die. Eventually, Ukraine will run out of drone operators and drones far before life becomes intolerable in Crimea. Gilbert Doctorow talking about 80-year-old retirees on top of a hill, unable to get to the bottom because there's no gasoline for a Tatar cab driver to bring them down, does not mean that Crimea has become uninhabitable. I've been to Crimea. I know people in Crimea. They live in Crimea. I wouldn't send my kids to a children camp right now in Crimea because of the war crimes of the Ukrainian government. But millions of people live in Crimea. They thrive in Crimea. They're doing okay. It's not uninhabitable, and it doesn't indicate that Russia's losing the war. Crimea is not cut off from anything.